through optimizing our health, having impeccable relationships, and following our life purpose, we can truly thrive. This is the quote. This is a part of the mission of our next guest, our next disruptor. But before telling you who is he, welcome to Disrupt Everything podcast series. There is a great value in disrupting oneself, modifying oneself, pushing oneself, going against oneself's beliefs, questioning oneself, choosing oneself. There is utility in being uncomfortable, out of place, out of the game. I'm talking about applying disruption to us, to you, to everyone. But wait a moment. Disruption doesn't happen when you are watching Narcos or Game of Thrones, or when you are sweeping up in Instagram. It happens when you try something uncertain for the first time. That disruption, that personal disruption, happens when you launch a ton of bad ideas. It happens when somebody decides to delight a small audience, but a really well-defined micro segment. And they do it with an offer designed and tailored to the weirdest. Disruption hates expectations, the fail of failure, hopes, and reformation. But above all else, your disruption fights against mediocrity. It goes far beyond limitations and the chance of not being able to do more than anybody else. Disruption loves the possibility of doing something that nobody has done before. This kind of personal disruption surpasses every obstacle, every hype, every trend, and every social network. This movement you are provoking stares at you, daring you to be the best version of yourself. And so for this, today, we have a new international guest. This is a man, believe me, I will need 4 podcast episodes to cover a half of the topics I like to explain to him. I like him to explain to us. This is Manex Ibar. Manex, welcome to Disrupt Everything podcast series.
Thank you, Isra. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here. And I'm definitely all about the disruption as you've just described it. It's perfect.
Thank you. And let's jump into the intro and then we go. And I will explain you who is Manex Ibar. Freedom is to dissipate fear into love. This is one of the quotes really impacted me when I was researching about Manex Ibar work. He's a spiritual scientist, consciousness plus individual health optimization, spirit, shamanism, and sound. This is what the core of Manex life and work. He's an active spiritual speaker, a reputed ceremonial leader, and a powerful business guide. He's a multi-talented spiritual and scientist, an entrepreneur of consciousness and sustainable life systems, guiding individuals and businesses toward optimization through a combination of modalities, including human design, energetics, remote viewing, shamanism, Kabbalah, and genetics. Manex helps digitalize brands such as the NFL, NBL, Muppet Babies, Universal Pictures Properties, Sony Pictures Properties, Star Wars. He became one of the youngest Sony executives as VP of New Media and Technologies by the age of 23 years old. He founded a non-profit organization, BF Season, and his own company, Purest Media, producing transmedia campaigns and managing artists using new technologies and social media platforms. His organization partnered with UNESCO and the United Nations Environment Program to create global art expos and Ansel Adams Foundation and National Geographic that celebrates sustainability, fashion, music, and art. working alongside with Al Gore and other celebrities on the global warming campaign. In 2006, Manex's personal spiritual path invoked a complete career shift, and he will explain us about that. He started his profession in the spiritual world at the age of 26. Then Manex began to recognize and develop his gifts at the age of 14, becoming initiated into shamanism, Taoist philosophy, and Tibetan Bon tradition. He spent over 20 years studying under many well-known spiritual guides, teachers, and mentors of many philosophical cultures and religions lineages. He's the author of Shamanism, Oracle App, and Tarot Cards, author of the Sphinx Code, Wisdom System, and Nature Spirituality, released in 2020. And Manex is currently writing 2 books, the Much Needed Sex Books for Men and Healthy Systems for Vitality in the Future, to be published in 2021. He's lecturing a bunch of colleges of physics studies in London, Butterfly, LA, Academic Kitchen in New York, and he's the leader of Wisdom Quest, a modern shamanic experience, and he will ask him about it. Founder of Frequency Life, Sphinx Code, Conscious Medicine Labs, Living Shamanism, and Bioenergetica Institute, and also, and I think most importantly, father of twin daughters. Manex lives in the Basque Pyrenees in Europe, is now close to San Sebastian, and frequently works and flights and travel to New York, Los Angeles, Miami, London, Stockholm, Berlin, Paris, San Sebastian, Ibiza, Madrid, Toulon, and Oaxaca. This is Manex Ibar. I told you I would need 4 podcasts to cover half of the topics. I would love him to explain us and to ask about it. But Manex, welcome and thank you for being here. And wow, what impressive career and what impressive turbulence and changes and disruptions, right?
Yep, it's been definitely a beautiful life. I'll say it that way. I mean, I really enjoy the idea of that humans are multidimensional. And so in a sense, you know, we have, when we embody that and we really expand into it, we can really do so much more than we think we can. And I think I've had a big challenge in a way where a lot of people have always said, focus on one thing. And I always say, I can't. If I do that, I'll break that thing because I have too much energy for one thing. And life has just kind of brought me to do many things. So it's been a privilege, maybe a gift and a curse all at the same time, because obviously being very busy, I get to be busy.
It really resonates on me. Do you happen to know Alexander Tanus?
Yes, very much.
Yes, very good, really good friend of mine, and I had the honor to attend one of his sessions, and he said something like really resonate. He was the first person I heard it, and you being the second. And he said like life is, the beauty of life is not in a narrow path. Is the how wide open can you make it, right? And you put it beautifully with humans are multidimensional. I always find that limitation in society. The world doesn't need experts. World needs wise people, right? And in order to recognize patterns, you have to open and widen your broad. You broaden your
100%.
The way you see the world. Wow.
Yeah, that started with having 2 cultures, you know, because I grew up, it's even 3. I was born in Paris, but I was brought up by a Basque grandfather. And then I moved to the US. And I always felt at the beginning, I actually went into a deep depression around 8 years old because I never could find a place because I didn't fit in anywhere. And actually, later on that became my power. It was the gift that was kind of given, is by not fitting in one place, I was able to understand many places, the difference of the cultures, and then also the commonalities, which actually brought me into understanding that humans have commonalities, even though we might be brought up different, rich, poor, religious this, religious that, non-religious. We still have these core human aspects. And then we have this multidimensionality, all of us. We have the potential, incredible potential,
Manex, the first question it comes to my mind after breathtaking and breathless, life work and life project, which is, I think, or many life projects in the same life, is if you were going to put your life in a timeline, which already is, what will be the highlights you will put as a milestones since you can recall until
Wow.
up until now?
I mean, there's been so many. It's amazing to try to, how many do you want? Like 5, 10?
I'm open.
You're open? Well, I remember there's a thing right around 2 years old. I saved this child's life who fell into the river. And then I come back, and then he lied and told all of the parents that I pushed him into the river. So I realized that was incredible. Like, you save somebody's life and they betray you, and then you get in trouble. And I couldn't believe that. And I still remember that. And that's anything. And I forgave him because I was like, it's okay. He just didn't want to be weak. I remember that. Obviously, moving to the US and going through this depression was a pretty big milestone, and having to come out of that. At 14, I popped out of my body, had a very strange experience in the woods where I basically was walking just to stretch my legs out. I was a drummer in a rock band at that time, which was actually a saving grace. Music and sports was really the way that I got out of depression, in a sense. And popping out of my body and having this very bizarre experience is definitely a little milestone that shocked me, because at that point I had kind of given up anything spiritual and religious, especially, and I was really focused on physics and let's say the material world as the reality, and anything that was spiritual was just for hopeless people that needed something to hang on to. And here, popping out of my body, having this insane experience of completely melting into the universe, thinking I was dead, pretty sure I was dead, and then coming back. I remember that first breath that I took, I was like, wow, I'm alive, and that was pretty amazing. And that actually resonated later on, about 32 or something like that. No, maybe, no, 20, I forget how old I was. Time is an interesting thing when you have a rich life. I think it was 27 that I actually died in a vision quest in the Pacific Ocean, and literally drowned and blacked out, died, don't remember time, and then actually found myself back on the beach, very much like a movie, coughing water, and my shoulder dislocated in a wave, basically, and then I couldn't swim, and I lost the feet, and so I had to like pop my shoulder back in and find somebody to do that. And then a blue whale came out as I was sobbing for my life, because it's super emotional to die and come back. And this whale just kind of said, "Stop crying, sing." And it was just so I couldn't breathe, I couldn't smile, I couldn't laugh, I couldn't sing, and yet she was like, "Sing." And so this weird sound came out of me, which was like and that kind of came out, and then all of a sudden that was a wonder. And so I learned how to sing shamanically through a whale that saved me from death. I'll put it that way. That was remarkable. I think obviously during the Sony days, I had some pretty interesting moments. I remember with Yo-Yo Ma meeting him and kind of being in awe of him, and yet it was him that said, "Ah, the star Manesh that I've heard so much about," and that kind of cut me off because I was like, "What? How does he know my name and how does he know me?" And so he was waiting for me to brand him and put him on the line, and so that was an incredible honor. And a little bit later, I was alone at Carnegie Hall, completely empty, with him on stage while we were filming him for the website. And I mean, that was breathtaking as well. Just incredible moment of this master playing this incredible music. And he could have just been messing around, but no, he gave his full self, went right into trance and just started playing as if there was, 1,000 people in that stage. And that was spectacular. Uh, Meeting Al Gore was interesting. I was running this huge show in San Francisco for World Environment Day. And of course, Al Gore comes, he's, ex-vice president, FBI, this and that, and all security. And so I have like in my earpiece, the FBI is coming, the first car's coming, the second's coming, Al Gore's going to be there. And I'm running back to the place where Al Gore's going to be to give him like the tie, because I really want him to wear a green tie, which was like our symbol. And I actually just passed right through the security guy, and I'm like, just get out of my way. I need to get there to Al Gore. And actually, he's already there. And so I passed the FBI, and we kind of like bumped into him, and he was like, how'd you just get through? And I was like, well, I'm running this place, but why are you already here? I thought you were in the second car. And he's like, well, no, we always miss it around. And so we had an interesting little call and conversation right there. He did not wear the green tie. He just held it. He's like, I can only hold it. I'm going to keep the blue tie. I was like, oh, man. So that was funny. That was an interesting little moment. And then, spending 44 days alone in nature with myself was pretty extraordinary. And after such a long time of initiation, still fighting with my own ego, that was extraordinary, actually. And yet, in that, there was some magical moments that are hard to put into words, where I hit these states of being that are just unbelievable. So in the Vision Quest were moments in my life where I found the most peace and the most depth and the most wisdom, in a sense. And of course, every one of my teachers is extraordinary and have so many different stories. I remember specifically my first sweat lodge with Archie Firelame Deer from the Lakotas, and just being like this opening of rainbow energy, because everybody looked like rainbows, because they all had different colored auras. And I was in the sweat lodge sweating, everybody's sweating, and I'm just in peak joy, and I'll be like, what is this thing? It's unbelievable. Who are these guys? And so learning from him was an honor, and then every teacher, as I said. And I mean, every love story is a good one. You can't forget those.
Yeah, Manex.
And I've been lucky to have several.
Wow, it looks like you had not several hundreds.
Maybe not that many.
What's the what would you say is the experience that, or the big experience that has impacted you the most from everything you've lived up until now?
I mean, spending time with myself in the mountains, facing nature. Getting hit by lightning, for example, was mind-blowing, very enlightening and shocking. Like literally shocking, more so than even dying. I mean, dying is a weird thing because you almost know that you're going to die. And so you have this time. It's interesting. I was talking to an apprentice that went through this process, and you're going to die, but you also know you're not going to completely die. Like you're going to, somehow it's not your moment to check out. And this whole moment. But with lightning, it's from one spot, you're here, and then all of a sudden you're hit by lightning, and it's that fast, and you have no idea. So you have no time to think, no time to react. And it's so violent and yet soft. It's very interesting. Like people, I think that lightning is so powerful, because we hear the thunder, and obviously there's a gigawatt of energy that goes through, but it actually goes right through you, and literally you feel like you're nothing, and this thing just blasts you with so much light, and you blank out in white light, a little bit like the toad experience, but much more powerful, because there is, again, no warning, there's no anticipation, there's no expectation, there's nothing. I mean, you just get hit by lightning and you have no idea what's happening. And there's a lot of fear there, but there's also this incredible gift of being able to go inside that experience. That lightning strike was, I would say, that was probably pretty phenomenal for me. And that really shifted things, because this whole idea of enlightenment, it's actually this very temporary moment that happens actually quite frequently, but it's in that moment, if you can try to expand that moment, is where the wisdom starts showing up. And usually it's in a moment of deep tranquility beforehand that some shock starts happening and awakens that moment of wisdom, which usually comes after the shock. So it's through the time of reflection of what happened. And I think the lightning was probably one of the biggest moments of shock and downloads, I'll say it, afterwards. So that was big. But afterwards, it's the continuous spending time alone and in nature, being able to really understand how to relate to myself, and relate to the universe, which is always relating back to how you relate to yourself. And there's no lying, there's no escaping anything. You can't you're faced with yourself, and it's your shit, and it's right in front of you, and you either face it or you can't really run away. I mean, you try, but you can't. It's right there and it follows you. So yeah, that's been phenomenal. And at the same time, there's this incredible pride. So your ego takes on all the efforts, in a sense, of having gone through this thing, and it's funny to watch the ego come back right after it's been completely dissociated, and you want to laugh at that ego, that because it is part of the spark of us in this life, right? You can't get rid of it ever, so you have to also honor it, but control it and educate it.
Yeah,
That's the whole game.
When I finished Vipassana, the first I did with as a server, someone said to me, "We have to be more compassionate with our egos," and I really I love that. I love the way
that's it,
and the way you put it. What's an optimized life, and how we can get there, or at least what steps do we need to follow to start optimizing our living?
It's a really good question, and I think it's very personal because it's very individual, but there are some basics. I mean, first you have to learn how to breathe. I mean, that's your basic thing. And 4 minutes, 5 minutes, if you're an expert, you go without breath, and then otherwise you're dead. So breathing is very important. Drinking incredible water. Like I love living in the Basque Country, and wherever I try to live, I'm always looking for water source, not this fluoride water that goes through pipes and all this. Like just this raw, alive water. Drinking that is a phenomenal thing. I remember fasting several times and then being able to just drink water that was from the mountains. And I remember feeling like, wow, I'm more nourished with this than the junk food that I'm eating, especially from New York and having been in New York, where the water is not good. I mean, they say it's great, but it's not good compared to the freshness. And I think this doesn't sound revolutionary, but it's so fundamental. And then, so secondly, water. Thirdly, your food. You have to be aware of your food. And I think a lot of us go too much into this mental diet versus eating with your body. What does your body really want? and seeing, first of all, like fasting is a great way to start learning what are your addictions. Like, is it pizza? Is it chips? Is it, whatever, which is your first like things that you miss, compared to after a 4 or 5 day fast, you're like, oh, I want, like, I remember I wanted asparagus, white asparagus from Spain.
Oh,
And I mean, it's tasteless in anything, but it is the best. And like, just that nourished me so much. And it was amazing because it actually also cleansed my kidneys, which is one of my weaknesses. And so really understanding what your body wants, and rather than being mental in terms of eating, like in a diet, really just listening to your body and what it desires. And so when you are at a restaurant, maybe not eating correctly mentally, but eating to your raw animal senses actually feeds you correctly. Those are the first three things that you have to have, and obviously cleanse from metals and toxins and all this, because we're all so dirty to a certain degree because of our society and the pollution that it is. And from there, you can start getting to kind of like the next level, which is, I think one of the keys is accepting yourself deeply. And that starts the shadow work. Because to optimize yourself in that, let's say optimization is a light version of yourself, you have to face the darkness and be able to accept it, because the more light you get it to be, the darker you also are. So they go together because we're in this duality, right? So the farther you go to one side, the farther the other side also extends. And that's the capacity of really understanding your shadow and accepting it as part of you rather than running away from it. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, don't want to face their fears, don't want to face their deep emotions, don't want to face all this shadow stuff, the psychological junk, and yet that's where the light is for. It's to put the light into the darkness so that we can transform that darkness into love, into that acceptation, which, as you quoted me, I learned that very much, and several times that's been my savior. In a sense, it's when you're scared terribly, whether it's losing love to somebody else, or it's getting a bear in front of you, or um, you're about to die and drown. Like, that fear is so huge. And how do you accept it and therefore transform it? And that's actually the moment of liberation, is when that fear is transforming and that pain becomes joy, because you're actually alive at that moment. You're so alive. And that is kind of that moment of flow, when an expert, athlete is overcoming their peak performance and surpassing themselves. It's really that moment when you surpass yourself because you're going through that fear. So I think that is the second level. And once you start getting really good at that, so you obviously have to disrupt yourself massively, because to face those fears, if you're living comfortably in the warmth and everything else, you're not going to be pushing your boundaries of where your fears are, and you can't disrupt yourself, and you can't therefore go into that place of transformation and therefore liberation. Once you get good at that, there's this complete other aspect of being in this. I mean, it's more than gratitude. It's grace. That life is perfect and beautiful, and that we are all gods in a weird way. And therefore, how do we interact with the power of creation and co-creation as we surrender deeply into our destiny, into our alignment with the divine, of what we accepted in a contract somewhere, of working on this place for the divine, with our duality, so our light and our darkness, in harmony with everybody else, right? And I think one of the things that I've come up with a lot is, the best things we are here for as humans is to sing, dance, after making our food, and communing with each other through joy. That's where we don't hurt any other species. They all love it when we dance and sing together. and it actually brings us into humor and love immediately. And that's where you start appreciating love on another level than the attachment of, oh, I'm in love. It's really the love of being alive.
Incredibly powerful. I love and I mean, the 2 days I do every day, every week, 2 days just water. So you say like you gave me strength this day because I felt like this weakness. Um, it's great to say that we never forget that we live in a dualistic world. So let's play with duality and find unity there, right? Um,
Yeah.
Manex, how to guide people through layers, layers of consciousness and how to guide oneself through this process.
I mean, that's what I do. It's my job. And so it depends where you're at and your level of consciousness. And I think I talk about this a lot. It's almost like there's different levels of real understanding and obviously of conditioning. So, you know, we grow up and you have all these programs, literally these modalities of beliefs that prevent us from seeing the whole picture. And so I love this kind of square idea. You kind of make a square and you have four lines. So you have a grid and you say God, God, no God, no God, destiny, no destiny, destiny, no destiny, right? And so you have this grid where you have all the possibilities of there's God and destiny, there's God and no destiny, there's no God, but there's destiny, and then there's no God and there's no destiny. And somehow all four of those are existing at the same time, and they're potentially true. And what you do is you're born in one, and if you're lucky, you go to the second. And if you're really lucky, you go to the third. And actually, we can't go to the fourth, which is kind of a phenomenal thing because we kind of blow up and we wouldn't understand. And yet the truth is somewhere in the middle of the fact that all of those can exist, right? And so the difference of seeing somebody who believes that there's God, but there's no destiny versus somebody who believes there's no God and there's destiny, or no God and no destiny, it changes your perspective of how you see the world. And literally the experiences that you co-create to enforce that belief system. And so when you go from one to the next, where like I did, for example, I didn't believe in God and I didn't believe in destiny. I thought you were completely all by yourself. Your ego constructed everything. And so that whole empowerment up to the point when, you know, you get hit by lightning and you have nothing to do with that, or your shoulder pops out and you die and you go and drown, like you don't choose that, obviously. So, and yet why am I still here? And then how did that bring up, well, then there is something out there and there is some path of destiny. I think a lot of people are in that, you know, where's that variation of, okay, I still believe that the ego is fully responsible for my life versus I surrender completely to God and destiny. And yet I'm showing up and being very present to the experience that is being given. And both of those require a very different type of consciousness. And I think it's part of a process of learning. And that's the different levels of consciousness, which then shapes your life differently. And so it depends where you're at. You know, if you believe that your ego is still dominating and you're in control and you need to have control, there's ways of guiding a person through that experience that is going to be very different than somebody who's surrendered to the divine will, let's say, and accepts their destiny and is ready to be much more in alignment to their destiny in a sense. And so guiding somebody, you have to understand where they're at first. And so for somebody who doesn't know where they're at, that's a good contemplation right there. And then really starting to contemplate, well, why? Why do you believe that? You know, I mean, from both sides. Why do you believe there's no God and there's no destiny? Or why do you believe there's a God and there's destiny? And how does that actually shape your life? And how is that beneficial? Like, is it beneficial really or not? Because that's the point. Like, I think I'm very practical. Like, I used to be very romantic and idealistic, and I've gotten to be very practical. Like, how do I, you know, whatever, like, I want that. Like, how do I get that? Do I want that because of my ego that's just desiring something because I'm escaping the moment? Or is it something that I want because it's going to actually embetter my life, which then is going to embetter everybody else around me? Is it going to raise my frequency to be better for all, for me, and then for all? And so there's this funny thing with the ego of it's interesting. The more you evolve, the more you realize that the ego is such a beautiful tool that you actually need, right? Even though at the beginning you want to kill it because it's always the one that's getting you into the addictions. But once you've trained it, it's not addicted anymore to the negative stuff. You then need it to empower yourself. I mean, it's literally the willpower, right? And it's with willpower and discipline that you get to that excellence. I mean, from being a school student to practicing your sport or your instrument, like, and yet not being so hard on yourself and rigid, where then you miss all of life and the magic of life because you're only just doing that to practice. You have to actually let go at certain points so that you can enter into that flow. And I think it's a really good question, and then it's a tough question to ask because there's so many varieties of people at different levels in
Yeah,
life, right?
the question becomes the answer, right?
Exactly. And I mean, the question immediately is, well, where are you, and what do you want, and what's bothering you, and what's preventing you from being where you want to be or how you want to be? Because the beingness is there for us at all times, just being human. We are having an experience all the time. But what kind of experience? Are you enraged because you're pissed off because you're not getting what you want? Well, okay, but what do you want? Well, I want her and she's already in love with somebody. Okay. That's a tough one, right? Are you sure you're in love with her? Because obviously, if she's in love with somebody else, how do you know you're in love? Or is that just your ego that thinks, well, no, I had signs and like, the psychic told me and this and that. I mean, there's all sorts of excuses. And so what do? You're frustrated. Well, then, okay, you're having an experience of frustration because you're not getting what you want, but like that frustration is what you need to work on at that moment. And actually the acceptance, again, it's that moment of being able to accept the situation, which is actually going to unlock some of the frustration, which is actually probably going to open up the potential of her even seeing you, because all you're sending is frustration or aggressivity that you want, versus accepting, which then actually it's like the qigong or the martial arts, where then it can come into you, and maybe then she's going to be in the relationship and be like, this guy sucks, actually he's like peaceful and great, and actually I'm going to go say hi to him. And then you start getting what you want, right? But you have to like look at your situation and see what is blocking you, what's frustrating you, what's creating tension, and whether that tension is a good tension that's making you surpass yourself, or if it's a tension that's
It's
ego
blocking you, no?
based in the fact of trying to grab something that's not meant to be grabbed.
What have you learned about alleviating suffering, Manex?
One of those noble truths: we all suffer. I
Yes.
think this is a debate that I still have a lot and talk about it, and I go back and forth. Do we need sufferance to grow consciously or not? And some days I say, nah, you can just meditate and be peaceful and grow. And then other times I'm like, no, you absolutely need that tension and sufferance. But that sufferance is almost, it's kind of like you're hitting a boundary, and by hitting that boundary you see where your limits are, you see where you can grow out of and into. right? So you need that boundary. So that sufferance is that. I mean, I have a client right now who's lost her love, and he was married before, and finally they're together, and I was supposed to marry them, and then he just dies of a heart attack, young, 45, whatever. The suffering she has right now is unbearable for her. She doesn't understand. It's almost destiny just screwed up. That wasn't supposed to happen. The fact is she doesn't know what's going to happen within 5 years, 10 years. Perhaps there is another love, but right now she's stuck in, no, there's only one love, and that was my love, and it's gone. Therefore, I am missing something, and in missing, you see life with that perspective, and so things are missing, and therefore there's suffering there for her, and that suffering is actually preventing her from accepting the situation and then being able to move further. And in a sense, it might be that his death is asking her to communicate with the other world, with the unseen, which, funny enough, he was all about. He was very much completely connected already, and she used him almost as a crutch, because since he could do it, she didn't have to do it. He did it, and now she's forced to, because she actually wants to connect with him and say, well, what the hell happened? Why'd you go? Right? And so of course she calls me and says, can't you just go and ask him? And I'm like, I'm not going to be your crutch. Let's make you do it, right? And that's now her evolution, and that's where her suffering could become her greatest teacher. And I think in Buddha's words, the truth that all of us are suffering, and yet when we face our suffering, we can overcome our suffering, which is how we learn, how we grow, how we gain consciousness of the human experience, of the life experience.
I was with Shaolin monks training for several weeks, and one the master said, "Pain is a fact, suffering is optional, and you will overcome it. You have a other option in that case,
I love that.
Manex,
I studied actually with a Shaolin monk in New York, and I was doing I ripped both my hamstrings, and he was like, "That's good chi, very good chi. You come back in 6 months." I was like, ah!
when people talk about the Navy SEALs as being tough, but when you get to know these guys, I was with the American Navy SEAL that was training there too, and he said, "Man, this is Navy SEALs on steroids. Like they tough, right? They're really tough.
They're crazy. They're on a whole other level. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your personal tactics for optimizing your potential, Manex? What's the ones you carry with most of the days, and they've proven successful to you?
I mean, it's really looking at my frequency, and so when I wake up and I'm kind of in a bum mood, doing work in a bum mood doesn't work. So it's not optimizing anything. So immediately I'm going to try to say, okay, what can I do? And I'll try to go out in nature. Nature is one of the biggest things. If I can't go out in nature, I try to bring nature in. That's why I started an essential oil company. And I have these essential oils that I have like basically my little medicine bag of 9 oils, which is actually 56 plants.
Wow.
And so I'll sniff them, I'll put them on me, I'll go take a cold shower, I'll try to shock myself. Well, first I try to do the soft things of take a breath, breathe, and then use essential oils to shift my energy. I'll try to put music that shifts my energy as well. It might be movement, it might be stillness that I need. I don't know yet. Some days it is stillness and not pushing myself and needing to be gentle. Others, it's like push myself and move your ass, like, and motivate. And so I have to find out what is it that I need first. So if I need to move my ass, it's that cold shower, that movement, that brusqueness, and pushing myself to get out of the rut or the bum situation. But yeah, nature is a big thing, because usually you're stuck. It's the mind that's stuck, and then trying to see what brought on is a waste of time. It's well, sometimes it's useful if it keeps coming as a pattern. You have to analyze the cause, but otherwise you can shift it. And so what's the fastest path right now to shift my energy? I mean, sometimes it's literally just, if you're looking straight ahead, just turn and look left, and just keep looking left for a while, and see that it changes your perspective. Literally, it's about shifting your perspective, and so that pain might go away or not, and if it doesn't, then you have to take bigger measures. So for sure, breathing, cold showers, shock, essential oils really helps with the frequency, because since we're all frequency, we're all energy. How do you change your energy? Then I do have a course that's called Clairescence, which is basically a whole set of 24 meditations that kind of goes through your energetic body. And there's so much stuff in your energy body, like in your auras. So there's programs and beliefs and entities and, spells. And I mean, like, there's just so many things, cords that link us to people. And so immediately also I'll start going into that meditative space and trying to analyze, where am I energetically? And I'll move things around. So I'll start taking away dark energies. I'll start cutting cords, and trying to enlighten myself, literally, by bringing more light into my body and into my energy field, up to the point of having to do qigong, and going and doing that qigong practice, which I think is incredible. And I think if it's the base of martial arts, right? I mean, it's the base.
It's so
And
powerful.
that includes breathing, visualization, movement in consciousness. And so that usually always shifts my energy if it's really desperate. I mean, I had twin girls, as you said. That's probably the hardest thing I've done, is having twins and being a father of two girls. It's a very interesting experience being a father, like a man that's trying to teach women to be women. Like, not normal in a way, and yet it's the
Never
most
thought about it
beautiful
like
thing.
this way.
I mean, you just want to give them everything, and yet you have to say no at times, and you have to be hard, and this and that, and be the man. So they teach me a lot in how to shift, and basically when they were born, I had to do qigong. I went into rigorous practice of qigong. I would go up in the mountains 5 a.m, do qigong, breathe, come back, and that was the only way that I was going to be surviving. Because, like, I mean, it takes all your energy.
Thank you for the tip. Thank you for the tip.
So,
Manex, did you find your higher self? If so, how did you find it? What series of steps do you think you followed?
it's also a good question. And I think it's a multiple layered question, because, depending on where you are, your higher self is at a certain place until you go to a higher place, which then your higher self goes higher, right? And it's always pushing you higher. So did I find my higher self? Of course, I'll tell you, yes, absolutely. And I think the highest I've reached was this time in a vision quest, after struggling with my egos for 3 weeks and being pissed at myself for being like, I've done vision quest for so many years, 13 years. How am I still pissed off after 3 weeks? And at that moment, there's something that happened where I melted completely into the highest place that I've ever been. And I saw things about who I was as a soul that just was so beyond my reach as a human that it's almost like impossible to reincarnate it back into this place. And it is this level of, we are source, and we are such part of a system that is so much vaster and bigger than all of us can imagine, and you have to trust it. So the first times that I met some of my higher selves were with basic shamanic training and basic shamanic journeying. So you take the drum, and with a very constant beat, you go into this kind of trance and you start journeying into the upper worlds, and you can literally meet yourself in a your spiritual guides, let's say, and you start meeting those and you start talking, and usually it's quite an incredible experience. And then as you move up from that, you start going into higher realms, where then, you go all the way up to source, basically, which I think it's like that lightning strike. But I think meditation is very powerful for that, very powerful, depending on what practice you want in terms of the prayer. I think there's a certain surrendering to believing that there's something higher than you. I mean, if you're deeply in the ego and there is no belief of God and there is no spirit and therefore there's no higher self except for your own optimization, you're not going to go meditate to find something that doesn't exist, right? So usually in that state, you have to be broken. You have to hit a wall. You have to be blocked in your evolution, where you go into that deep suffering to then be able to even meet something higher than yourself, which then gets you out of that. And then the practice of vision quest and spending time alone, fasting, just drinking water, interacting with yourself. Your ego dies after 2-3 days. It just completely melts because it's just trying to hang on and trying to hang on. It's actually usually trying to get you off the mountain. I'm hungry. You're bored. You have other things to do. Come on. This is a waste of time. This is selfish. This is this and that. I mean, you hear it all, And so when people tell me their fears about doing Vision Quest, I've heard them all of myself, and I know like that it's just the ego yapping away, and it's the lower self in a way, the little me, versus the higher me, which is your universal, multidimensional, incredible being that is, when you peak that disruption, when you peak through the wall, the threshold, you meet it and you expand. And it's that I can't go further, and then you do.
Yeah.
That's your higher self.
What are the most important lessons after more than 25 years studying and work about with your craft?
Discipline.
Man,
I
cannot love you more if you say that word, man.
I mean, it's the worst, but it's true.
It's the worst, but it's the best.
It is. I mean, that discipline gets you places. It really does. And that's one of the greatest learnings, which, I used to rebel against discipline. And then eventually it was actually through discipline that I got anywhere. I mean, doing Vision Quest for 13 years every year, that takes discipline. Anything that actually meant something took discipline. It takes discipline to be in a relationship and be committed. I mean, it's easy. Like I always say, when when life gives you a break and you're not in a relationship, enjoy it, because you're free and you can do whatever you want. That's easy. You can go and this and that. Most people are like, oh, I want a relationship. It's like, okay, well, hold on. You enjoy your freedom right now. It's really nice, but it's because they're afraid of being alone. They hate being alone. I actually love being alone because I've learned to do that. And I think that's part of the self-love. So that's another thing, self-love. Self-love. Like, do you really love yourself? Can you hang out with yourself alone? And do you love it? Can you dance with yourself? Can you make love to yourself? It's like, masturbation is a funny thing. It's either you use it as just a release and it's just this wank, or do you make love to yourself? And that's one of the most beautiful, precious, incredible thing. Like, really, how do you make love to yourself without the other? And then once you learn how to make love to yourself in a beautiful, honorable way, you can then make love to the other. And how do you share that? And then I think vulnerability, that's still one that I love to work on. That's hard. That takes real courage. So it's the discipline to be vulnerable to self-love.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Discipline, people love you and hate you at the same time, right? Love you because you are disciplined and hate you because you are disciplined. And I'm not. And if you are, I'm seeing in you something I don't want to. No, that's the, I'm saying it clear because that's the story of my life, man. Story of our lives,
All
right?
of ours.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's all of ours.
But discipline is a course and also is a blessing.
Exactly.
You have to live
And
with
I think with discipline, you have to learn how to be flexible. Like, so I'm very much into flow and following flow of life. Like, when there's this, it's interesting because that resistance helps you push through, but also resistance sometimes is, listen, life doesn't want you to go there. Like, relax. And that relaxing is also huge. I mean, we don't go with the flow because we're so adamant about, I want that goal. But actually, if you relax without that goal, that expectation, that thing you want, life usually surprises you and gives you better. And so you have to like learn to dissociate that difference between life pushing back on you to test you versus life saying, no, like, don't go there, go here. And I think the rigidity of our mind is really the thing that's it's the discipline of being flexible, right? Also. And so if you're always doing the thing at 8 a.m., you get up and you do this and then you're not in flow anymore. But the discipline of 5 times a week, I do that. So sometimes it's at 8 a.m. Sometimes I sleep in and it's at 10 a.m. Sometimes it's at 10 p.m. because the day just like caught me and then I got to do it at 10 p.m. But the discipline is do it
no matter what.
at some point in the day. I mean, if you look at things in nature, when I observe nature, you see everything that's dead is stiff and rigid. Everything that's young and is flexible. And if you take that into yourself, it's not only flexibility within your body, it's really flexibility within your spirit and therefore your mind. That's important. Even though obviously the flexibility, I have a partner that's amazing and she's all about flexibility. And I mean, literally when she goes into flexibility, it freaks my body out because I'm definitely not as flexible. And I feel like, oh, that's the next challenge. And I mean, the Shaolin monks are definitely there, I mean, my hamstrings, as they broke, I never went back afterwards. I was like, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. And yet that's exactly what I need.
Exactly. Spirit.
It's coming.
Spirit. Yeah, we will. Well, when discipline teach you what you need to do, and then if you have this 100%. Discipline, you follow it. 100%. So eventually you get there. Eventually, right?
Eventually.
Spirit consciousness comes before matter. Can you please elaborate on this, Manex?
Yeah, that was a big shift for me because obviously as a scientist, I was all about matter and matter is matter. And then, the rest is horseshit. And then actually, I started popping out of my body, having these other experiences and being able to start seeing that matter is actually a construct of energy and frequency. And you get to the quantum level and it is all vibrational. And so matter is actually a form of spirit that is just in a form that we then capture. So mind and spirit is what creates this illusional field of matter, which is amazing. And so you can literally change. That's why I said the rigidity of the mind is what we need to be very careful of, because of course it's easier to go and do flexible training and you stretch and this and that, but your mind could be rigid and you do flexible training like this, you're not flexible. And actually you'll cry as you rip your whatever, versus being completely releasing in your mind and being flexible in spirit, your body follows very quickly. I mean, the tension, I hold my wrist, I hold my fist, I release my fist. It's the mind that releases the fist. So it's in the mind that it all happens first. And I think that's the hard thing. It's almost like having your higher self instruct your mind to then instruct your body. And sometimes you have to push the body, you know, to make it go, which then changes your mind, which then reunites you to spirit or your higher self. But basically, I mean, science is now showing it. I mean, I think it's like 5 years ago, if you mentioned consciousness in a room full of scientists, they kick you out. Now it's like, who's the higher consciousness scientist, you know? And Nassim is a really beautiful one who talks about consciousness being the thing that intercepts and creates time and space, and without all of that consciousness. But what is consciousness? You know, and that's the big scientific mystery these days. Is it inside our body? Is it outside our body? Does it exist as a plane? Is it a force? Is it not a force? Is it? And so we have to develop the tools. We have to develop all these things, which is where the Buddhists training are like, we've been doing this for thousands of years. Here, let me explain. You know, and it's that idea of awareness is one thing, but consciousness is another thing. So are there just different levels of consciousness, and your awareness is the training to enter into the different fields of consciousness? And there's probably consciousness that's beyond the human experience. I'm pretty 100% sure about that. And so, you know, some extraterrestrials look at us and they go, oh, these little humans, they're still just capped here, you know? And then can we peek into other awareness and therefore reach higher consciousness? I think so too. And so once you've reached different higher consciousness levels, you can influence the body in totally different ways where you create magic. I mean, I love this idea, and I had several teachers, and it's happened to me in different ways, but I'll use my friend who materialized a diamond in her hand, like because she believed that she could, and therefore she knew she could, and by knowing she could, she did. And then she did it, and then she was blown away, and obviously blew the other person away, because she literally manifested matter through mind, just because they were having a debate. And so at that moment, she needed to prove that debate. And so it materialized. Obviously, if she comes up and tries to do that every day, it won't happen. But I think, you know, there's some Buddhist masters that get to that space where they can do it almost on a daily basis. It still takes a massive amount of energy to basically do alchemy, where you're transforming matter through mind. But that is the practice of alchemy, which, you know, that it's illegal to make gold, which is just unbelievable. There's a law that says you can't make gold, which means it's obviously possible. So alchemists have done it. There's a way of doing it, and you can just basically accelerate the process of the transmutation of matter, which is basically consciousness doing that, which can become very technical, like an alchemist would bring it, or mystical, like her, just in a moment being able to be a master alchemist without understanding how she did it. But I think that's possible with all of us. Like, we've all moved time. We've all traveled through time, you know, like you're catching that bus, or you have to get to school, and you know it's 15 minutes usually to get to school, but you only have 8. But you have to be there, otherwise, like, and then somehow you get there, and you're like, wow, I went really fast. It's like, no, you bent time. But we don't think of it that way. Wow. I remember one of my teachers telling me that, and I was like, wow, what? He's like, of course, we bend time all the time, but we just don't realize that we're bending time. I saw him split himself in 2 because he had to argue with 2 people at the same time that were in different rooms, and we all saw it. And I mean, like, talk about, you know, stubborn. he split himself in 2 because he was so stubborn that he couldn't let go of the wrong teaching that was happening while he was giving us a teaching. Again, that's where the ego and the willpower is pretty amazing. Like, on a discipline level, it can create this magic. That's what we're all kind of looking for.
I'm going to jump into the last 2 questions before the rapid fire questions, and I'm going to save the other ones when we're going to get to see in person. I think it's going to be soon. I think it's gonna be soon.
Okay,
I
that'd be
hope
amazing.
I can make it for the Wisdom Quest in
That'd
Hawaii.
be awesome.
Um, what shamanism has taught you over the years, and how has shaped your life?
I think shamanism has taught me that one, the experience of being human is in the body. So it's being connected to nature. It's being connected to the body, to the experience. We're all spirits that are immortal and amazing and incredible lights of source. If we can remember that quickly, then we can get to what's really amazing, which is our physical unique experience that's maybe 100 years, if that, and that's where the magic is. It's in the sensual experience. And I think shamanism has brought me a lot of practicality about enjoying life, being in joy, and using humor massively, even through suffering. It's like you can laugh at yourself suffering. That's going to make your suffering be a lot better than if you're suffering, right? And so I think shamanism, what is it? Well, it's an earth-based spirituality. That's why you can't kill it, even though the church has tried. It's always going to come back through incarnations of people that just listen to nature and allow their spirit to be taken by nature and the power of nature. Even if it's a simulation, it's an incredible simulation that's beyond us, and therefore this is what we're here to live. And we can really learn so much from that, even though, as you discover it, there's some darkness and there's some weird things, but you go beyond that and you realize how beautiful of a gift it is to be incarnated. It really is. And the communion, the relationship, how do you relate? How do you relate to your body? How do you relate to the other? How do you relate to the tree, to the earth, to things, to the sky, even to, spirit? So that's been a really big lesson that I've really loved about the shamanic path. It's a path of the heart and it's the path of the body, even though it's highly spiritual, because you have to die in order to come back, which is exactly that. You're dead, you're in the other side, and then you're almost like, I want to come back into the body. Even though then when you're in the body, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to get out. Which is the paradox. And so that's the other thing I've learned so much, is life is a massive paradox. Is dualities again. Your spirit wants you to leave the body, and your body wants to live, to continue its exploration of this basically enlivened matter. It's almost taking something that's innately not alive, and then all of a sudden making it alive with spirit. And then spirit's like, oh, so tiring. I want to be free. I'm limited here. But then actually matter is expansive. And so that's the last thing that I've learned with shamanism, is that we can't understand or fathom how the experience and how much bigger you are than what you think, and how basically everything is really possible. Everything you can imagine exists. Everything that you've heard exists. Everything, which is mind-blowing, literally. So always be surprised.
Always. And Manex, what's briefly, what's the vision quest and the wisdom quest that you do, and what is in there for us?
So the vision quest was a ritual that was done. It was part of it actually existed in every single culture, but basically the Lakotas had it as part of their 7 rites that was given by White Buffalo woman. And the vision quest is about facing yourself. It was usually a rite of passage, and we've lost a lot of that, from being an adolescent to becoming an adult. And the reason is because you had to go face yourself with nature, with the great spirits, basically, to find a certain purpose for yourself, to find out who you are. That's not what your mom and your dad and your culture wants you to be, but what you and your spirit came here to be. There's this beautiful story of we're all stars looking, at the earth, wanting to come down, and we're like, oh, I could do it better, I could do it better, and we're waiting, and finally it's our turn. The shooting star shoots down, and we get to be a baby, and then we forget the whole thing. And yet we have a gift to give because we've been waiting for so long to come here to be a star, right? And so how do you awaken that sacred child to deliver what you're here to do? Vision Quest is very much like that. And so I've transformed it a little bit, where usually there wasn't plants and there wasn't so much teachings. I mean, the teachings was much more cultural. And so the shaman would teach you over a year, if not two, if not several. And so since we don't have that anymore, I do the 3 days of very intense teachings. I break down a lot of your egos. I give you a lot of information about your mechanics, your energetics, your subconscious psychology patterns, and all the bullshit that your parents and society have kind of put on you, believing what you are, so that when you go into the mountains, now you can break yourself apart and come back to who you are, which is this star, this, Wakanija, like this being of light that wants to be that star. And I think that's why we always want to be the superhuman. We just want to be the star that we are, and we're literally made of stardust, which is pretty amazing. And so the Vision Quest has that. I mean, like Vipassana, except that you don't have anybody and no auras to interrupt you, so you're completely faced with nature, which nature is source. And so you get to interact and relate to source to get you back to your own source. And with that, you become purposeful. You also learn how to deal with your biggest fears. I mean, really, the dark, not eating, sleeping alone, being alone. I mean, these are fundamental fears that you overcome, and then you start really enjoying yourself, because then you're okay, yeah, you still have some challenges when you come out of the Vision Quest, but you know how to deal with it, and you know what you need to work on, and you know what to focus on, in a sense. Even if you want to be multidimensional, you still know what to focus on rather than everything. It's these things. And then I added the plant medicines into it because at that point you fasted, you're so clear, you've given up a lot of yourself, so you can benefit from the plants that don't have to purge so much. The plant can then work through you in a much more beautiful, beneficial way, giving you more light, giving you more understanding of what you just did, which is actually come to nature, which is actually what the plants are trying to get you. They're literally trying to create a bridge and a communion with the human and with nature, to bring you back into nature. So here, imagine if you've already been in nature for 7 days, the plant doesn't have to do that much work. It can actually bring you to other realms and higher realms. And it also helps to integrate anything that you didn't do or you forgot, or you kind of like, nope, I don't want to see that. The plant says, no, you're going to see that.
We'll make sure that we share the links, the essential oils, the website, the project you built for the courses, also the meditation course, also the Wisdom Quest, and some other links that we ask that you can share with us. And so if anyone is interested in the Wisdom Quest, how can he or she access to it?
I mean, it's just wisdom-quest.com, and that site just basically has all the dates. It's usually during the summer. I'm trying to expand it a little bit into different regions, so that we're doing Hawaii, we're doing Puerto Rico this year during the winter months, because it's really nice to change the environments once you've done it. I mean, for me, it's been a practice, so I try to do them every year. I mean, once you do 44 days, you take a break for a little bit, but and then I'm trying to actually do the super Vision Quest, where you really go where no man has gone before, and we go into extreme places in nature where you really get dropped off by a helicopter and you can't come down by yourself, because,
let me know when you do this too. Let me know when you do this too. Sounds appealing.
Absolutely. Well, come do a first one.
Yeah. I need to start with the normal one. That's my ego saying, "Oh man, this one, that one. You are the star," like.
Exactly.
What advice will you give? What non-requested advice will you give to anyone who is listening to this podcast or watching this video?
What 100 advice did you say?
No, what non-requested advice would you give
Ah,
to anyone who is
non-requested.
listening and watching this video?
Wow. Just have a lot more fun. Just laugh at yourself too. Don't take yourself so seriously. You know, seriousness is a disease. You have to be serious about life, but with humor, because it's not that it's a joke. It's not a joke. Like hurting somebody is not a joke, but taking yourself too seriously is not a good thing. So I would say that, you know, and that immediately starts to help you accept yourself more, you know, because we're just trying to be perfect, and I'm going to be a perfect human being, and I'm going to be like the best, and I'm going to be Superman. I think my teacher one time, like we were picking flowers and doing some plant medicine stuff, preparation, and he looked, and I was looking a little bit like a Burning Man kind of freak, and he was like, "What are you trying to be, guru? Are you trying to be Jesus and save the whole planet? Why don't you just save yourself first and be a good human being?" And I was like,
Okay, I get
I
it.
am. What do you mean? What are you saying? You know, and I think that's one of the things is try to be the best on each little moment, and try to bring some light to yourself first, and then to your surrounding. Even if it's your house and you see some dust, like clear it, clean it, do that. You know, like before trying to be Superman.
And the last section, which is the rapid fire questions.
Boom,
What's
boom.
what's the book you have gifted the most?
It's called The Further Education of Oversoul 7. It's mind blowing, and it rewrites your brain. And you
Further
can't read it.
education.
The Further Education of Oversoul 7 by Jane Roberts or Seth. Mind
Wow.
blowing book. And I also like The Return of the Bird Tribe. The first like 40 pages is just gives me chills everywhere.
What's the podcast you listen the most, or is there any podcast you listen?
I do. Um, I like Joe Rogan just because he's very honest and raw in his way. I think that one, and I like Inner Truth as well. He's got some great guests of spirituality, and he's got great ways of asking questions. Of course, I've been on it, so that's how I discovered it.
A project you would start?
Oh, there's so many. I'm really building, and this is a passion of mine, is to try to build a conscious medicine tantric collective, so that we do psychedelics and tantric work and really open that realm, because it's been the most oppressed, and we need to, you know, experiment with both of those in a conscious way, in a beautiful, safe environment where it's not cheapened, it's not sex and drugs, it's actually literally conscious awareness using these two most powerful tools: plant
Was the
medicines,
a,
psychedelics, and sex.
well? There is no better. Well, you can get better than this, right? A crazy idea.
I have a fantasy of doing an incredible, well, I mean, the extreme vision quests where man hasn't gone before. That's a crazy idea, and being dropped off. But I have a fantasy of a fantasy novel that kind of came when the girls were in the womb, and it just would take. It's kind of like an Avatar place, and it's building a entire world of magic, basically, and probably building a whole theme park where basically you get initiated through the whole theme park, if not a video game or a virtual reality game, where it takes you onto a psychedelic experience almost of
Wow.
magic and training. That would be one of my ideas. Yeah.
What's the most peaceful place for you?
The most peaceful place, any mountain overlooking a beautiful view.
Your most successful habit?
Habit?
Yes.
My most successful habit. That's a good question. Um, I mean, I think Qigong, if not being in solitude.
Your biggest skill?
Biggest skill is probably, I think I'm really powerful in understanding the human psychology and the subconscious psychology. I have a whole system, wisdom system called Sphinx Code, which I kind of channeled into that, taking it from different places. But it's really through that perception of the deep understanding of the human psyche. And in a sense, how consciousness is constructed within the human.
Your most profitable business move?
Leaving Sony and moving to the mountains and tripping out. Took a while. But yeah, and really following, cliche, but following your heart and trust. It's actually just the trust of your crazy ideas. But if it's authentic and it's from your soul, it always will be successful.
A word to coin what or who you are?
Just one word?
Just one. Yeah, for you, it's usually three, but for you, it's one.
I was going to say wise humor, but I'll stick it to wisdom then.
What's the thing you are most proud of?
I mean, besides being the father of these twins, I think it's amazing to have inspired so many others now that are also teachers and that are teaching others into this, and mostly through sticking to the vision quest and having gone through that on a deep level through the discipline of doing that. But so yeah, inspiring people to come back to nature and awakening their own wisdom.
Any regret?
Oh, lots. Many love regrets.
The biggest one?
I mean, it's hard because it's almost like giving up one love for another love. And it's not a person, but it's the love of myself, which could be seen as selfish, but that is self-love. But I lost a love that was really beautiful, but in that she wasn't accepting who I was. And so there's this very deep, weird regret there that couldn't happen because it was really beautiful. And yet that's brought me to my current love now, which is amazing because she's the one. We're actually getting married in February.
Wow, congrats.
Right after the Vision Quest. If you're there, you can stay.
Wow, thank you. Who are the 5 persons you interact most with? You most interact with. You most interact.
I mean, besides my love for sure, Victoria, that's one. Obviously my 2 kids. And then interestingly, there's Missy Butcher from John and Missy Butchers from the Life book. I interact with her a lot. And she's wonderful. That's 3, 4. We can put the twins as 1 if you want. Yeah, I guess one of my kind of apprentices are the wisdom keepers, like the certified wisdom keepers. I'll put them as kind of like 1 also, which is Jade Dumas, Greg Keel, and David Newell. I interact with them on a weekly basis, and it's so inspiring because as I'm teaching them, I'm learning so much from them, up to the point where now it's just this beautiful dialogue and duologue, and then my spirit. I mean, I continuously myself, I'm continuously there. Yeah. my spirit guides.
Who would you recommend me to interview next?
Mm-hmm. I knew you were going to ask that. I knew it. I think you should actually interview John Butcher. I think he's actually a pretty amazing character. Otherwise, Tenzin Rengyal Rinpoche. He's an incredible, pretty powerful Buddhist Bon teacher of mine. And also John Milton, who's another teacher of mine before he goes. And another being that's influenced me a lot is Charles Lawrence, which I could put you in touch. Nobody knows about him, but he's a true wizard.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And last question is, if you were about to launch a message worldwide, what would be that message?
If I was to launch
a message worldwide on television, like a prime time.
I think the quote that you started the podcast with, that liberation is to dissipate fear into love. And that's how you get rid of suffering. And that's how you enter into self-love, true self-love. And that is enlightenment to me.
Is there any other thing you might want to add, Manex?
I can't wait to meet you in person.
Can't wait to meet you. Can't wait to meet you. Thank you. Thank you. Where people can find you on the internet to get more closer to your work, what you do?
I mean, mostly my site, manexibar.com. So MANEXIBAR.com. I'm on the Solvana app where you have a lot of my meditations, some courses that have done a great job digitizing all of that. And those are probably the two biggest places until I really start I got kicked off Facebook and Instagram during COVID. So I was spreading too much light, I think. They didn't really kick me off. They just kind of suspended my account and they're saying, until further notice, we're verifying your account for 9 months.
Wow.
And so that's no longer a question, but so I think I'm probably going to start either a BitChute or a YouTube channel or both, and we'll go into that and I'll be able to enjoy that. Otherwise, there's my podcast, which is on my site as well.
Okay. We share this in the show notes.
Amazing.
Manex, I finish with a quote, which is, "We are passengers of the stream of consciousness meant to live with abundance and joy." Personal disruption. Thank you so much, Manex, for the time. Thank you for being part of Disrupt Everything podcast series. Personal disruption means leaping to a new platform. It starts in the small but deep gaps found in between the comfort zone and the security area. It occurs when you dance in the edges, out of the limb, in the situations you are most vulnerable, trying things that are out of your control, taking on projects, ideas, or business that might not work. This personal disruption happens because of people like Manex, who is sharing this wisdom with the world, is changing from the very humanity and the very nature of the world. Then you allow your curiosity, ego, and boldness to serve you as a super boost. The impact you can create then is bigger when results are shared and contrast with more disruptors. This is Disrupt Everything podcast series. I'm Isra Garcia. Please check out the Manex website, his podcast, the vision, the wisdom quest. Am I going to see you there? For sure. And leave a review on your favorite platform. Join us, subscribe, share with just one person do you think it resonates, and keep moving. There's no matter, or doesn't matter if you are if it's correct or incorrect. The only thing that matters is if you are always on the move. We are on the go. and the journey continues. Thank you for being part of this Everything podcast series and video series.
It was a pleasure to be with you. I hope I come back again. Thank you so much.
The next one we will do it in person.
Amazing.